Welcome, everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, the Raging Verbalist, and this is the Facebook Live show. And with me, as always, or hopefully always, is Sandra. You know, she's in her bunker in the Midwest somewhere, and I'm now in California, being told that I'm under, I guess, house or whatever. So we'll see how that works. Today we're gonna have I think a great show for everybody. So you're gonna learn some things, and now with the current global coronavirus, we got an interesting show. So I want to just kick off by just telling everybody. So and I'll do the standard things like, hey, be safe and be good and do all those other things. But hopefully what we're going to come up with today is how you can kind of make sure that your business doesn't get crashed and trash. So today we're going to talk about what I call the zig, the zag, or the sag. And it came about because I was doing a coaching call with a client, and he says, well, John, I don't know if I should zig or zag or what I should do. And I said, well, there's a third option. It's called sag. And sag is something that is like gravity, and it sucks. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what do you do when it appears that the entire world is shutting down? Well, we are there. Yesterday evening, I get this, this little, start getting these texts from people. In fact, Sandra was the first, give her a gold star. And she said, hey, by the way, did you see that the governor of California is shutting down the state? Closed for business. You're now done. And I was like, what? And I started looking it up, and sure enough, there was the guy who I didn't vote for saying, you know what? Yeah, we're 40 million of you, unless it's essential, don't travel, don't go out, don't go do things. And it was like, yikes. Now this is going to be a hitch and a hurt in my giddy up, but we got to figure out what we're going to do. So right now, I'll just tell you that for most of us, we're going to watch this take place. There is no way to predict when this is going to end, and I will save you a lot of energy and because see, we're going to dissipate a lot of energy through just running around like crazy and being negative. Is do not suck yourself into watching every news feed over and over and over again. They had this, I won't even tell you the channel, but they had this, here's what happened in spring break in Florida. And they showed like, oh, I don't know. They showed 8 seconds of a tug of war on a beach in Florida, and they re-racked that thing. I thought I was watching a GIF. I mean, come on. It's like, yikes. So don't get sucked into that, because it's really a waste of time. So today we're going to talk about, should you zig, zag, or or sag, and one of those things. Now, the next thing is that you have to, how do you mentally adjust for such a radical change? And it's really hard, because most of us are very rigid. We think that everything is going along fine, and this is the way life is. By the way, for all of you who have said that life was kind of monotonous, guess what? You got a wake-up call from the planet. Hello, no longer monotonous. We now have a pandemic. We're now going to do this, and it just creates this massive change. And I can tell you that every single one of my clients is going through a gut check. All of you are going through a gut check. We're all going through a gut check. So what you have to do is you have to just understand that in times of radical change, that you say to yourself, okay, how do I get my head wrapped around whether or not I'm going to, zig or zag or snag? And what you really want to do is start planning on what you're going to do as this thing unfolds and where it goes. If you focus on productive things, you'll get more stuff done. If you suck yourself into, oh, wow, look at this and look at that. If you watch the Johns Hopkins map, where it shows it like almost like watching sports about where the next thing is happening, probably not a good use of your time. Probably mentally it's going to be very hard on you. Humans, by the way, don't change much at all. In fact, it is the quintessential joke, which is, you meet somebody, they've just gone through a divorce. What did the guys say? She tried to change me. If you meet the now ex-wife, you say, well, what happened? Well, I was hoping I could change him. People don't change. It's hard for people to change. And in this case, we're not given much of a choice. Bang, we have to change. because that's the way the world is. That's what's going on. We now have to go forward and we have to figure out where we're going to go from here. And each of us has to pick our own method and how we're going to do that. I can tell you from experience, I actually have a video that if you want to go to positiontowinbook.com and you want to get registered, you can do that. I mean, by the way, the book came out on Tuesday. For those of you who didn't make that episode, Tuesday, the book finally came out. What perfect timing did Gabe and I have? Think about it. I mean, like 740 something days ago, we started on this journey and we had it come out just in time for the coronavirus. Man, that's a hard thing to try to predict and have happen. But the book is available. But if you go on there and you go watch my speech that I delivered, hard to believe, 10 years ago called Valley of Fire, I've been through some of these issues that all of you are feeling right now. And you have to understand that you are the person who's going to be driving your bus now and in the future. And if something happens to you, well, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes within reason to make sure that you're going to be healthy and you're going to be successful and you're going to make it through that. And if you do that, life will be much better for you. So you mentally adjust by saying, there are things that you cannot and will not be able to change and affect, no matter what. It didn't work when you were 3 years old and you said, I'm going to hold my breath until I die, and then you're going to all be sorry. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. So let's just not do that. Let's use nice deep breathing, and most importantly, figure out what we're going to do. Also, I'll remind everybody who's out there is that if you want to ask questions, send them to us as we're doing this. You can always send us questions to the Facebook group and ask away, and they'll be incorporated. If there's a topic that I should be covering that I have not, ping me on that, and we'll look at it and see what that is all about, and we'll keep going from there. I'm really excited because we had the best attendance ever on St. Patrick's Day for the launch of the book, and we're going to troop on, and you'll watch how that progresses. So with that, Sandra, welcome, and do we have a question? But welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here. First question, what do you do when it appears that the entire world is shutting down?
Okay. Well, what you do is you don't go crazy. You don't go out and say, all right, woe is me. What you have to do is you have to start thinking logically about this. Other day I was at a Costco, and if you haven't seen my video from last Saturday's Costco, it's crazy. Everybody waiting in line. So this time I'm going there, and I'm going to get in because it's a weekday, and I get inside, and I'm going to, and while I'm waiting, a truck pulls up, and the guy from the Costco guy yells to the truck driver, "What are you carrying?" And he yells, "Water." And the whole crowd cheered, "Water," as if, we don't have a tap or we don't have anything like that. So what you have to do is you have to really kind of get yourself figured out and sorted out as quickly as you can, so you don't push that too far. But what you need to do is keep your mind thinking about this. Okay. So and as I've said about radical change, just you got to deal with that. All right, next question.
All right. How do you mentally adjust so quickly to this radical change? Did you want to add anything there?
I think we're good. I think
okay.
I kind of rolled through that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So how does this compare to the Great Recession, 9/11, the Great Depression, Spanish flu, or the plague?
So here's an interesting piece of advice from somebody who has studied lots of business failures and lots of panics and, bear markets and bull markets and all of that, is that every crisis that happens is that we as humans like to look back and say, does this match up? Does this match up to that? So is this crisis like this crisis? Is this like that? I mean, and we just love to do that. And we love to do it because it means that we have a a frame of reference that we can work off of. It means that we can figure this out. We can get our heads wrapped around it. And having lived through 9/11, and on 9/11, I was actually on an airplane. And the strangest thing happened to me is that as I landed in Phoenix, I was actually headed to Phoenix and got off of the plane. And I was waiting for somebody to work for me who was flying in from Austin. And I was going to go wait by his gate because I got in early enough to do that. And then he and I would go and get the rental car. And as I was standing there waiting for him, this guy rides up on a mountain bike inside the airport. And of course, he's wearing a little vest that says police, and he has a firearm, so I pay attention. And he says, by order of the FAA, this airport is hereby closed. Now, I can tell you that having just flown in that morning, but frankly, 2 days before just had been in Chicago and flew back home and then was back on the road again, everything changed in a very big way. And there was an entire sense that it was all going to go back to normal. And the thing that you have to wrap your head around it is that it's going to go back to normal, but it's going to be the new normal. It's going to be a different normal. So this is one of those circumstances and situations, though it's hard to believe, because when a crisis happens, is that we go through the same 5 steps for death and dying, same 5 steps, which is, the first thing is that we're going to deny it's going to happen. We're going to go through all the steps, but denial is going to be a big one. And we want to go find someplace historically and say, does this fit? Does that fit? Does this look like it? And I heard one of the silliest things on one of the channels in which somebody said, you know what? This is like the it's like the Black Plague. Well, for those of you who are not into history, the Black Plague, at that time, there were like 450 million people on the planet estimated, and they lost 1/3 of them, 150 million. That's a big number. And in some locations, it took over 100 years for the population to come back. I don't think that's going to happen here. I can't predict the future. So I think that it's easy to try to go find something like that and say it's just like this, but it usually isn't. This isn't like 2009, because in the Great Recession, it was a financial collapse. This is different. Now, will there be financial ramifications? Will there be dislocation? Will business be affected and changed? Yes, yes, and yes. Now, the real question is what are you going to do during this process to be ready when business goes back in place? See, when the Great Recession hit in 2006, I spoke at the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. And what I wrote my speech about was because I had 5 consulting clients that were in the mortgage business. And what I wrote my speech about was the fact that I called it the coming crisis in the mortgage industry. Now, when I get there to Baltimore to the National Association of Mortgage Brokers event, I end up with a packed room. In fact, they said no more people. This thing was just packed. And usually a breakout room has like a couple hundred people. They estimated there were 300 people squeezing into this thing. And what I said to them is that we are in the edge of a potential crisis. And I laid it out and I talked about it. One of the guys in the audience was a reporter for Forbes magazine. I thought, hey, this is good. Maybe I can get some national press. And the guy said, it's a little too provocative, a little too much hyperbole for us. Probably not our kind of thing. Fear mongering. Well, just a couple of years later, it was, wow, that was pretty smart. Now, unfortunately, none of my 5 clients, with the exception of one, heeded any of that advice. Now, they kept paying me until the crash happened, but they never really heeded that advice. And they never really figured out the scariest part that happens in all of this, which is when you are looking at the edge of a crisis, you have to be very clear in what you're thinking and what you're going to do. Now, this is different because that was a financial crisis. This is a health crisis that will create a financial crisis. And no matter how bad you think you have it here, there are lots of places around the world that are going to be hit in an enormously immense way. Now, I know that everybody out there has events because everybody, most of the people who are out there, we're very much travelers. I am a very much a person who's a road warrior, as I've talked about in the past. And I'm going to tell you, I understand why the tiger in the cage at the zoo paces. I like being on the road. However, I'm grounded. I'm not on the road. It's not going to happen. So what you have to do is you have to say, how do I make this productive? Spending any time being upset and angry at the world or at the circumstance is not productive. What are the most productive things you can do? By the way, what's all that stuff that you've been putting off, right? And I have people who will say, well, John, I do want to do productive things. So I can tell you a productive thing you could be doing right now or soon, not now. Hang with me. But the book that we've been working on is now out. We've now released it. So if you want to go get the Kindle version, go to Amazon, or Apple has an ebook, or Barnes and Noble, and then all of them also now have the paperback, so you can have your very own copy. If you want an autographed copy, we have a limited number of those that are available at positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. But now you have some extra time. You can also go take the quiz that Gabe and I have put together, positiontowinbook.com /quiz, and go take the quiz and see where you're positioned. And all I can tell you is that we have no AI engine to look at these. So if you send them in, Gabe and I actually will personally go through and send back and tell you what we think. So it's kind of an interesting way to kind of get that. And who knows, maybe you can figure out how to position yourself in a better way. Anytime you're dealing with this kind of crisis, great fortunes are made at these kinds of times, not instantly, but they're made because the seeds are planted. This is, if you wanted to ever pivot, this is going to be a great time to pivot, because there's going to be so much change and so much disruption. And now the question is how will you position yourself to win? All right, Sandra, what is the next question?
I'm going to hop over to an online question.
Great.
What industries do you think will prosper during this economic contraction?
Anything to do with remote communications, remote meetings. In fact, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag because we just got this book launched, but Gabe and I and the team are working overtime to put together essentially a manual of how to do what we're doing now, which is how to project your message and communicate your message remotely. So I think that anybody who learns how to do that will do better. I think that that ability to communicate via distance is going to do well. I think so I think that's like the most obvious one. The places that are going to really get hurt are anything to do with transportation. And all I can tell anybody who's thinking about oil, I saw yesterday that I think it was Kentucky that gas hit 99 cents. So that, to me, if I'm going to make bets, it's in software and mechanisms by which we can communicate in spite of the distance issues, and that to me would be my biggest belief. Now, these stocks have gone through the roof, so I would watch that. But it's how do you utilize those tools to your benefit will have a big plus for you, especially if your competitors are depressed and sad and binge watching something on Netflix or whatever. I mean, you should be working hard to get better at this so you can go knock it out of the park, because we're going to have a shift, and it's going to be a shift that everybody's going to wake up and go, wait a second, we may never go back to the way it was. So traveling may change forever. All right, what other question do we have?
I got a follow up to that last one that actually says, what fortunes do you think will be made?
Oh, so I think the fortunes that are going to be made are how do we deliver to people, and I'm not talking about like Uber Eats, but how do we deliver to our customers? How do we communicate? How do we work together? How do we actually forge relationships via distance? And fortunes are going to be made by those who learn how to utilize the tools. See, I mean, I think the guys at Zoom and GoToMeeting and the WebEx, which is owned by Cisco, I think all of them will do fine. but it's really somebody who learns how to leverage and use those tools in new and unique ways. I was just talking to a long-term client this morning who has an event that's coming up, and they're probably going to have to cancel the event, which is, what do they have to do to make that event really, sing and sparkle and do really well via distance? Because when you're small people, small companies, little, poquito, you've got to figure out how to do that. So fortunes are going to be made by those who figure out how to leverage this communications mechanism, and more importantly, how to deliver that message as quickly and as effectively as you possibly can. If you figure out how to do that, I mean, so it's, one thing to benefit from the tools, but it's another thing to learn the tactics and the techniques and learn how to actually implement those things and really get good at it. Considering that most of the presentations I've seen, which, people euphemistically say death by PowerPoint. Now the real question is how will you be able to deliver this and keep people engaged and excited and all that? And I think so. Now, what do these customers want, and then how do you deliver it to them without you actually having to be same place at the same time?
All right. Next one. What do you mean about zig, zag, or sag?
Now this comes because people think that you have really two options. You can zig or you can zag. You can go this way, or you can go that way. Uh, but the third option is sag, and that is that we have a lot of gravity, a lot of friction coming into the system right now. And if you kind of give up, I mean, it's just like when I heard about the 40 million Californians are going to sit on our ass here. Well, I know that there's a lot of people who are saying, well, I'm going to hole up, and I'm going to, I'm going to go get some cocoa, and I'm going to, do this, and I'm going to just take. Well, all I can tell you is that that's a sag, and a sag is that I'm going to not fight against that. Now, when 2009 happened, I ended up doing a turnaround in 2009. So I was very busy in 2009. And 2010 was a step off the cliff because I had a business that had been doing quite well, and we did an entire year where we did, instead of a couple million, we did $36,000. So that was tough. But the real key of it is to keep working at that and keep being as productive as you possibly could be, and thinking about what that looks like, and thinking, how do I set myself up for that other side? So to me, a sag is where most people are going to eventually go. I mean, I don't care if you zig or you zag, but what I don't want you to do is sag. I don't want you to just sit there and just go boom. I'm not going to do this. And what's the point? Frankly, you're going to find out if you have a mind to, if you can get the intestinal fortitude. You know what? A lot of people that you couldn't get a hold of before, you're going to be able to get a hold of them now, because they won't be able to say, well, I'm on the road, I'm traveling. No, they're going to be in their office, they're going to be in their house, they're going to be somewhere. And this was pointed out to me the other day. For my engineering services company, we got an email. Hey, how are you guys handling coronavirus? How are you guys dealing with coronavirus? And I saw that. I gave the guy a call. Turns out that he sent out 700 of these emails. Think about it, 700 emails. I was the first person to call him back. We then sent a written response to him within 24 hours. Hey, we've got a little bit more time. I was the first out of 700. His statement was, you guys are really good. And I said, hey, buy more. It was my opportunity to tell him, you need to buy some more stuff. So instead of sagging, you got to zig or you got to zag, but you got to do something, because you got to stay productive and stay active. And all the processes that you've been putting in place, all of the things that you've been putting off to learn, all of those types of things. Okay, lower activity, make yourself more productive. But for heaven's sakes, don't waste your time doing a lot of silly things that aren't going to really pay off. I know maybe that sounds like I'm Dr. Buzzkill instead of Dr. Speed Selling, but I'm going to tell you, you gotta keep yourself working in a positive direction, and it's going to alleviate a lot of stress if you do that, because you're going to feel like you're getting stuff done. Now, having said that, let me give you the bonus part is that do not have Do not have high expectations that as you're doing this, that it doesn't feel like you're shoveling against the tide. The point of it is that you want to stay engaged, keep practicing, and then at the other side, my belief, there's no guarantees. My belief is that you will show up and people will go, wow, you really did so much more than everybody else out there. All right, next question, please.
So a follow-up to that would be your top suggestion to avoid SAG at this time.
So my top one against SAG is that, my father owned a machine shop. He was a tool and die maker, and he had written on his wall, "Rust never sleeps." And it was to remind us that gravity, these forces of nature, are always there. SAG happens when we accept that there's nothing we can do. There is no point in trying to push forward. There's no point in trying to work at this. So the first thing is to go back and say, okay, where are the projects that I haven't done? Where are the books I haven't read? Where are the audio I haven't listened to? Where's the video I haven't done? And what can I learn from it? And then how do I productively channel all that and now start communicating that? This is a perfect time to test things. Again, as long as you don't expect that you're going to get big, huge reward today, but now you can start testing these things. Now you can start moving these things along. I mean, jokingly, Gabe and I, and I say this tongue in cheek, but it's still true, is that, how do you write a book? Well, for me, it was 30 years and a Colombian, because it did. It took me like 30 years to get to a book. All right. So Gabe and I are working on the launch of the book. Work. Coronavirus is starting to take off. The world is starting to, slow down. Everything is happening in real time every day. It seems like it's getting worse, not getting better. And as we're sitting there talking, I said, by the way, that project that we had been talking about, which was down the road, got to get the book out, got to get the launch out. We got a PR agency, we got a marketing, a book marketing consultant, we got a booking agent and marketing manager in Sandra. We got all this stuff going on. And I said, you know what, we got to get this other project accelerated. So what we did is we literally assembled the team in almost real time, and we have been working away at it. And by next week, we'll have an announcement. That's my tease. We'll have an announcement on the next one. So the first one took me 30 years. The second one may take me 3 weeks. But I'm going to tell you that part of it is the fact that, we could have easily said, oh, well, we've got a game plan. We're going to stick with the game plan. We're going to do that. There's a very valuable lesson that I learned sitting at the tables in Vegas. And that is, you have to play the hand. You have to play the hand that you are dealt and that you're looking at right now. Not the hand that you want, not the hand that you think should be there, not the thing that you're, geez, I deserve this, or, from all I've been through, why don't I have? No, it's what the hand you have. And the hand we have right now is we have this circumstance going on. So being productive, start figuring out all the things that you need to get done, and get on with it and get doing those. Because my belief is that if you do that, you will be in a much better, more positive state, and you'll actually get some things done. And you'll say, wow, there you go. I got this stuff done. And maybe what it does is it gets you into a different mindset, because see, what we normally do is we have a routine. We fall in that routine, we live in that routine, and we never really get out of that routine, and we get in that rut. Well, guess what? Ruts are, we're getting blown up. We're getting shoved out of it, and away we go. All right, next question, Sandra.
All right, I'm going to pop back over to the chat with another one.
Oh, good.
Do you think direct mail will be even more effective as marketing tactics since everyone is at home?
If you can get to a post office and get the postal people to deliver it, yes, I do. I think getting something physically to somebody will be a really interesting idea. And I can tell you, having now, so what? Yeah, I'll just step back out of the frame for a second and say, so, and you're going to say, geez, John, another shameless plug. Well, kind of. So to get people a copy of the book, like some of the, the early adopters, those people that we wanted to read the book and review it, is that I started physically sending books to people. And as you physically send books to people, it's very interesting their reaction, because they could tell that we literally sent books out to people. Now, anybody who's gotten one of these, I put in bookmarks for them, I do some things. So direct response is great, because every single one of those people who physically got the book and they actually talked about it. So yes, I think targeted direct response is probably a really good idea, because first off, most people aren't getting much mail. But just be advised that there are people who are out there saying this. I heard a doctor, she's a doctor, and she said that what she does with her mail is that when the mail shows up, she puts it in a bag, and then she lets it sit in the bag for a period of time, you know, in a quarantine area, before she then takes it out. So people may be doing that. But yeah, I like the idea of direct response, because again, they're sitting at home, but here's the thing, I would never do direct response today like I used to do it. I'd never just do bulk stuff, because I think that, I mean, you can do it, but I think there's just too much breakage, too much cost. But what I would do is I would do very targeted things, and I'd follow up with a phone call and a Zoom meeting and a text and an email, and waving a flag at them, or whatever we have to do. But I would put that in the mix, because I think getting them something in their hands, especially if it's something pretty cool, I think it's going to do pretty well. It's going to get their attention. And like I said, their availability, their mind share, though they're sitting there obsessed. That's the downside when people get a crisis like this. They get obsessed about it. I understand if you're sick, you're going to be obsessed, but they're obsessed about it even though it's not hit them yet. And all I can say to you is that if you can get in front of them and you talk to them, you're probably going to have a much better chance of closing them and doing something with them. All right, what do we have next?
All
Great
right.
call, great questions. I love these. Keep them coming.
All right. How do you deal with people who are extremely negative about what's going on?
There's always a percentage of the population, and in fact, there was a study done in the 1970s at UCLA where they tried to measure internal self-talk. Now, understand that there's no way to put a big auger, or and then have it pour out of their head. But what they did was they were trying to find out what percentage of humans is negative self-talk versus positive. Like, I think things are getting better, or I'm having a good day, versus I'm not happy about this, and my back aches, and on and on. And what they discovered is like 80% of self-talk is negative. 80% of self-talk is negative. And what they further postulated is that that's driven by a survival mechanism, right? Because our mind, our heads are trying to make sure that we survive. That's why there's certain level. That's why there's a certain level of this panic that goes on. Is that say everything was going along great. That's my favorite Stephen Hawking's quote. Stephen Hawking said everything was going along great until the Big Bang happened. Well, this is like a big bang. Everything was going along fine. You were gonna check out what you're gonna check out, and now this thing happens, and people are like going down here and there. I mean, when I hear people telling me the death rates from Italy on this, I go, okay, you don't live in Italy. You're not planning to go to Italy. You're not in Italy. Now, I mean, if you have relatives, I understand. If you have empathy, I understand. But that number doesn't affect you. So what you have to do is you have to think, okay, how do I deal with that? Now, those hyper negative people, my suggestion is that you always hit the I can't talk right now, or the decline button on the calls, or whatever, because those hyper negative people will bring you down. There's no two ways about it. This is going to be a giant sea change. When 9/11 happened, example, is that the very next week I was on an airplane. The very next week, and I'm flying from Ontario, California to Dallas, Texas. And there's like 17, 18, I know, under 20 people on the plane. Flight attendant comes over, tears in her eyes, thanking each and every one of us for flying, because the planes were empty. She was seeing that it was going to be, like she's going to lose her job. Well, now they're doing it differently, right? Delta yesterday canceled 70% of their schedule. That's like serious stuff. So we're going to see where this is going to have big ramifications. And what the last thing you don't want to do is be around what I call the amplifiers. The amplifiers are they take a problem and they amplify it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Do all the precautionary things you need to do. If you feel like you've got to be sequestered and hold up, like the Unabomber and be away from everything and all that, okay, whatever you feel you have to do to be safe. But what I want you to do is not to be hyper negative, because that is corrosive and it will eat you alive. It will chew you up. I have seen people who became very, very negative, very emotional, and sadly, it ruined their lives and it put them in a very bad state. And the last thing that you want to do is say, we never have enough time. I mean, every year that I'm alive, I realize how fast time moves. And as you move through your life and you realize the preciousness of time, do we actually have time to be that hyper negative? Take precautions, be aware, do what you need to do, but for heaven's sake, don't let that stop you from living your life that you need to live. All right, Sandra, I think we have time for one or two more. What do we have?
All right. Are there ways to get a defensible position in the middle of the crisis?
One of the things I like to talk about, especially when I'm working in business situations and you're doing a turnaround, is that a turnaround means that we are losing multiple battles, if not having lost a war. Now, if we've lost the war and it's all over, that's pretty easy. You shut it down and you just fire sale everything and you're done. But a defensible position comes from my work in turnarounds in the mindset that how do we find a position that's out there in the marketplace, and more importantly, a financially defensible position. Now, these are going to be trying times, but you have to keep asking yourself, what is my defensible position? What is at my core? And this was exemplified when I was in the foreclosure business, when I walked up to a guy who literally was he was, as I like to say, listening to the Bob Dylan song "Knocking on Heaven's Door" because he was going to lose his house like really quick. And he had this BMW that when times were good, just a year and a half before, he paid cash for this car. I said, why don't you sell me the car for cash and then get your house in order and all that. Now, during this conversation, heated negotiations, lots of swearing at me from him, is that what I found out is that one is he never told his wife that they're in the process of losing the house because she worked a different shift than he did. So he always took the mail and took the sad notices and threw them away, hid them. Now, what I can tell you is, yes, I did end up buying the car and he kind of got himself some time. But what he was not understanding is that you needed to be in a defensible position. And before he sold me the car, his statement was, but if I sell my car, my beautiful BMW, if I sell my dream car, what will my neighbors think? Think about that. What will my neighbors think when I don't have this beautiful car? And I said, well, what do you think the neighbors are going to think when they take all of your stuff out of your house and move it out to the front yard? What, you're going to have a garage sale? Or no, you're getting moved out. You've lost your house. So getting into a defensible position is difficult when we're in a crisis mode. A defensible position from a summary standpoint, which is what I can share with you now, is finding those things that you can do to make sure that you can last longer than this crisis is going to be. We have no idea how long it's going to be. Human beings love to minimize this stuff. I hear people talking, oh, it's going to be over in a couple of weeks, no. Plan that it's going to take months. How will you survive for months? What will you do for months? How long can you go if this thing keeps going and going and going? And most importantly, come out to the other side, not so mentally scarred or physically disabled that you'll then be able to start over and pick up the pieces and move on. Every single time that you do that, what you'll find out is that that resiliency really pays off. The most important thing, and I'll leave you with this final piece, is that mental toughness is the key ingredient to being successful in life. Develop that mental toughness every single day. It is easy to be confident and cool and collective when everything is going well. Today, you have to ask yourself, am I going to zig? Am I going to zag? Or I'm going to sag? Well, a defensible position means that you're going to survive, you're going to make it through the other side, and you're going to thrive because you're going to learn how to do what is necessary to be successful, not only through this crisis, but beyond, and be ready to take those opportunities that will be there on the other side. There will always be a lag of people who won't get it. There'll be people who will be waiting. The Great Recession, there were people 2, 3 years after it had happened and the economy had recovered and things were going on that were still waiting and sitting there wondering when it was going to come back, and it had already happened. And with that, I look at the clock and see that we are tight for time. I want to thank Sandra for coming on and asking the questions. And I want to thank all of you who participated and asked those questions. By the way, if you have not done so, go and join our Facebook group. Most of you are finding us through the Facebook group. We can also go to the positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Book is now available. Yay. Very excited about it. Yay. And make sure you come back next week because we're going to have a very special announcement, which is directed right at this crisis because, well, we're not waiting for somebody to say it's okay to go out and make things happen. Remember, there are people who wonder what happened, the people who are waiting for something to happen, and there are those few, those tiny few, that maybe 20%, 4%, 1%, who go out every day and make things happen in spite of what everything is going on. And with that, I want to thank you for attending and for being here. And until next Friday, not Monday. Monday is a different one. By the way, you can come on Monday morning and do a little Facebook Live, a little freemium. But next Friday will be another episode of The Raging Verbalist. I'm John Paul Mendoza, The Raging Verbalist, aka Dr. Speed Selling, with, of course, the lovely Sandra. And we wish you great safety and health and success. Thanks, everybody.